Hey everybody, this is Kit, and by popular demand, this is my very first cooking video, and I'm doing it on baguettes. Crispy on the outside, melt in your mouth, soft on the inside. It is not hard to do, but it's not exactly easy either. But if you come on this journey with me, I promise you, it is so worth it. So let's get started. Hello, hello, hello. This is my version of Lazy Man's baguettes, quick and easy, minimal kneading of the dough. The only thing you really need is a lot of time because this is a slow rise recipe, and you need about anywhere from minimum 6 hours. I don't recommend it. Really, it should be 12 hours to 24 hours. But let's start. So the most important thing is that you have to measure your ingredients. And then from here, we're gonna mix it for maybe about a minute or so. And I'm telling you, this is all that you really need to do. Just don't even touch it. Right when it starts sticking to the sides, and then after that, just clean off the dough off of the hook, and you're done. Cover it and let it sit. Minimum 6 hours. Again, I don't recommend it. Should go at least 12, maximum 24 hours. All right, at this point, your dough should be ready. This dough was able to rise for about, I'd say 17 hours or so. And if you look at it, it's very loose and jiggly. And if you smell it, the fragrance is almost, smells almost alcoholic because of all that fermentation. Okay, so before we get started, I want to go over some of the tools that you need. You want some kind of flat surface. You want some flour. You want a bread scraper. I like the curved edge here. Just a plastic bread scraper will do. There is a razor blade for later on when we score the bread. This is a baguette flipper. I know this seems ridiculous, but this is a huge help. All these tools, you don't really necessarily need them. You can find workarounds. Every little one of these things ups the quality of your baguette. And you need some parchment paper, a pizza stone, but you use this to slide pizza in, but I use this for the baguettes. This thing is called a couche. It's basically a very thick piece of linen. This actually helps to not trap all that moisture in there, and it lets the bread dough breathe a little bit. This is called the Preshaping. I do one direction and then I do a half hash direction so that I make sure that I get even coverage. This is a 70% hydration dough, so it's very moist, as you'll see. Okay, so we want to dust the top of it. And I know from past experience that we're going to divide this into three. Each of these three segments has to weigh 285 grams. If one loaf weighs a little bit more than the other, then what happens is you get an uneven cook time on each baguette. Use the flat edge, and we cut. So that one is good. All right, so this is called pre-shaping. The more rectangular the shape, the better. That'll become much more apparent later on because if you have an uneven shape, the baguette will actually be too bulky in the middle and it won't cook properly, and then the ends will get burnt. So again, as rectangular a shape as you can, roughly kind of like an elongated rectangle shape. And then fold it up and in on itself like that. And that is ready for pre-shaping. And at this point, you want to cover it with a piece of cloth and let it sit for 30 minutes. At this point, you should set the oven to 475 degrees now, and here's how you should set the oven up. If you go on Amazon, you can buy these pizza stones that basically kind of it's like 14 inches or so by about 10 inches. They run about 30 bucks or so, but you need to get 2 of them. Reason being is that the stones capture a lot of the heat, and it helps to maintain the oven temperature when you open and close it, so you recover the heat very quickly. And what this also does is that it blocks all the direct heat from the burners from actually getting onto the bread, so you get a very gentle baking method. And also, the bottom stone, what it does is once you put the dough onto the stone, you get an immediate cooking process. The dough jumps up, and that's how you get that spring, they call it. And then finally, all the way in the bottom here, you want to put a pan, something that you can dump the ice in. That steam that fills the oven, that'll help create that nice crackly crust that everybody loves on the baguette. Okay, this is what it looks like 30 minutes later. This is basically one of those things where you just got to do it a bunch of times to get a feel for it. Lay the dough with the powdered side from previous down. Dust it. So pat it down really good. And here is the key. You fold. You're going to do 4 folds. The first one's going to go just like that. And then you push with your fingers towards the back. And I use my fingertips to seal that. All right, and then we're going to do that again for a second time. Now you see the baguette starting to take shape there. What you're doing when you're pushing it away is that you're creating tension on the back side, and that helps again to give it the spring that you'll get in the oven when you put it inside, and it traps the air bubbles inside there and makes the bread really puffy. All right, here is the third time. And then once you get to this point, you see how I use my thumb and I push and I roll and I push and I roll and I seal it all over again. All right, and here is the last one. You're going to take the far edge, roll it out to where it meets, and then with your heel, see how I'm pushing with my heel, my hand, and then with my thumb, I'm doing kind of a pinching, rolling motion. Pinch and roll, all the way to the end. The reason you want to, again, pinch and roll is that you're creating tension on the outside of the dough, and that is how it goes. Here it is from the left side. Pound it flat. Roll a quarter of it. Roll it one more time. Again, pinch and roll method. My thumb goes underneath it. This is the third. Pinch, roll. Like this. And here is the final. All the way to the edge. Pinch, roll with your hand. And there you go. You see how you have roughly a kind of pointed edges here? That's ideally, you want it thick, then taper it off to like a rough point. Here it is one more time from my point of view. Dust the surface. All right, here we go. So remember, rectangular shape, that is important. Pound it flat. Get all those air bubbles out. And then fold. See how my thumb is right here? Fold, push, and then I curl over with my other fingers like this. Sorry about that. Pinch and roll. Pinch, roll. See how I get the seam right there? Pinch and roll. Oh, you guys are killing me. And finally here, get it all the way, seal, pinch, and roll best you can. All right, see how it's nice? This is the seam. We're gonna go seam side down. And here is another thing that you can do. If you take your hands, put a little bit of pressure on your thumb, on your pinky, and you roll it, and you can stretch it out a little bit, and you can put a little bit of pressure on your pinky, and you can actually, you can create like a nice little point. That's kind of an aesthetic thing. You don't necessarily need to do that. Because the dough is so thin right here, you'll end up actually getting a much crispier piece, whereas if the dough were if it were more blunt. So the sharper it is, the harder and crunchier it's going to be. The more blunt, of course, you'll get a more moist result on the inside. All right, so now we are going to go to the couche. This is the couche, and we'll start by laying in some flour. And here, drop it inside, and you can see it starting to take shape, just like that, right? Again, flour this. Drop the dough in like that. And last one. Drop the dough in like that. You slide them on. So with your rolling pins, I tuck it in on one side and make sure that the dough gets a lot of pressure so that it rises upward, not outward. So that one's tucked back over there, and you see it's nice and snug. Now we're going to let this rise for 1 hour. And here is what it looks like 1 hour later. All right, so you see the loaves spaced out. We'll pull it together like that. Set the baguette flipper there. A little dusting never hurt nobody. We're gonna roll it onto the pan like so, and you see it. And you can lay it down gently. That's why I like this baguette flipper. I used to do it by hand and it was a mess. Little flour. Roll it onto the pan gently. Again, it's very sticky, and you want to maintain that air inside. That's what's going to give it the nice puff. And you see the seam? We're going to put the seam side down. Roll it onto the pan. Baguette flipper. A little sticky there. All right, here we go. Finally. All right. So here we go with the scoring of the bread. What I found is that with these loaves, I grab on either side. I grab with my 2 fingers, and then I pull this way with my fingers and pull this way with the razor blade. And it's just one of those razor blades that I get from Home Depot, and I wipe the grease off of it. And I make sure that I move very quickly. You don't want to snag the end of it because that will just tear it. You want to do it firmly but very quickly. Quickly is the key. So here we go. Just like that, right? If you don't hold it, here's what happens when you don't hold it. You don't get as much of a deeper cut, and it kind of pulls the bread that way. But you can get fancy with it if you want. You can do one straight down the middle. Let's try that and see how that looks. Right? Okay, we're gonna spray it now with some water. And this is gonna go quickly, so let's do this. Okay, open, in it goes. I usually just use this to pull this out. Trying to move quickly here, and that's it. Alrighty, moment of truth, and looks gorgeous. Check that out. So ideally you want to put it on a wire rack so that the heat is allowed to kind of escape from the bottom, because if you put it on a flat surface, the bottom will actually get soggy. So you want to let it cool on a wire rack. And technically, it's still actually cooking on the inside, so you want to let it sit and cool down completely. That's what a lot of the bakers say to do, but there is nothing like having fresh, hot baked bread, because it just basically melts in your mouth. So that is it. Basically, if you start this recipe at about 5 o'clock p.m. the night before you want the bread, you wake up at about 5 a.m. and then start the process at that point, you can have fresh bread on the table for your kids to go to school by about 7:30 or so. So happy baking and good luck.